Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this panel session about the nuclear energy in the Nordics today and tomorrow. And I'm really pleased to see so many interested people here in the panel discussion today. So I would like to start first introducing our panelists today. So let's start from the Karl from the right.
So good afternoon. I'm Karl Thedéen. I'm the CEO of Studsvik, a company providing test software and other services to the nuclear industry.
Yes, hello, Jani Halinen, Vice President for Nuclear Energy at VTT, Technical Research Center of Finland, heading nuclear energy research, but I have also a quite strong industry background, having worked in the industry for more than 20 years.
Hello everyone, my name is István Szoke. I work at the Institute for Energy Technology in Norway, which is the Nuclear Research Institute in Norway. And I also serve as a Deputy Director at the Norwegian Nuclear Research Center and as Acting Director of the Norwegian Nuclear Association.
And I would like to introduce myself as well. So I'm Harri Varjonen, I'm a CEO of the FinNuclear Association and making this panel happen together with all the participants. So let's start with the first question I would like to address to Karl. So in Sweden, the current government has significantly shifted energy policy since towards nuclear and reversing the long-term standing phase-out plan. How secure are these policies for attracting long-term, multi-decade investment, given Sweden's history of changing nuclear policy?
Thanks for the question. First of all, I think this has not been something that happened in one day. It's been the new government has, over the last 3.5 years, worked very, very tediously to change everything from how we do research, policies, laws, financing schemes, and so on. I think that they've done a great job. I also have noticed in the political environment that the other large opposition party, the Social Democrats, are also very much in favor of building new nuclear power plants, which basically means that more than 80% of the current parliament is in favor of supporting existing plants and also new builds. So I think that's a pretty solid stance we have today. Then, of course, there needs to be the right financing and the right incentives and the right demand, which I think sometimes we forget in this discussion, to really get the building going. But yeah, I feel confident that these new policies and financing schemes will hold over elections.
Yeah, that's important actually to know that this is going to last forever, because the investment for the nuclear, as we all know, is going to last decades or 60 to 80 years, and you have to have a good point to see that how the investment going to manage until end of the lifetime. So, but then coming to the Norway, actually, Norway is also evolving the nuclear landscape at the moment, and Norway's nuclear sector is entering a new phase with growing public and political attention, which we have seen in many different cases. Then what are the key opportunities and challenges for Norway as it seeks to rebuild national competence and international collaboration, particularly in light of its special association with Euratom? And another question, actually, okay, I will ask that later.
Thank you for this question. I actually was asked that question a couple of times, and I said that it's a quite complex question, and I wrote a book on it, so you're welcome to read it. But simply said, everyone is more interested in what happens to nuclear power in Norway, obviously. And the simple answer is that we don't exactly know yet. There's a big analysis going on, ordered by the government to advise the government whether we should embark on nuclear power. But certainly, last year I was alone representing Norway here, and now we are more than 10 people, so that definitely shows there's a very strongly renewed interest and very strongly renewed debate about nuclear power. In the same time, of course, we are struggling a little bit in Norway. We are not associated to the Euratom program. Therefore, we are a little bit of a difficulty getting in the network, staying in the network of nuclear research. And in the same time, we also had the Halinen reactor project research, which was a very important asset. And we really want to make sure that valuable data and the knowledge that we prepare there stays available for the community. But if you read the book, of course, you will see that personally, I would very much like to see nuclear power in Norway. I think scientifically it's difficult to get a way around that. But otherwise, as representative of the Institute for Energy Technology, our main goal is to make sure that we actually have the option, build up the competence and build up the network. So if the decision is there, we actually have that option and we can act on it. That's our main goal at the moment.
So you will see in Norway that it's evolving, and in the near future you might see the nuclear in Norway as well, and the great demand of the electrification and everything. About the next question about for you as well, István, is that how important are national coordination structures such as a dedicated nuclear association in this process?
So we actually earlier signed a memorandum of understanding with Canada, and which I signed on with my hat as a Norwegian Nuclear Association. The reason why we set up this new network is that there's actually a lot going on in Norway, so more than people know about. The main problem that we see is that there's a lot going on the Norwegian Nuclear Research Center, and there's a Nordic network is being built there, but that is completely scientific. On the same time, there's some other initiatives more on the public delegate, like the Norske Kjernekraftkommunen, the Norwegian municipalities that are positive to nuclear power, and there's some other initiatives looking into the supply chain. But at the moment, these are not connected. And we do see that the only way we actually have the option for Norway to act should the decision come from the government is actually that we manage to connect these. So we do have the supply chain, we do have the capabilities, we do have preserved based on our earlier research or all the science and all the knowledge that we have, so that again, we can be ready. At the moment, this is a little bit fragmented in Norway, and we are hoping that we can unify these a little bit more.
Thank you. That was a good answer. So actually, I'm jumping now to the other two, the panelists. And Jani, actually, I want to ask you, coming to the industrial policies, that in Finland we are operating at the moment 3 different reactor types, reactor designs, and in Sweden they have 2. The countries are leading the way in the spent fuel disposal. What kind of competencies you see emerging in the Nordics that could benefit the whole Europe and the global nuclear community actually at large?
Well, as you said, we have, even in Finland alone, we have 3 different reactor technologies, and for an R&D organization, that's of course quite fantastic, but I mean, in terms of efficiency, then perhaps not the best case. In terms of competencies, we have recently commissioned the Olkiluoto 3 unit, so we have fresh experience from that. But as you said, on the back-end side, especially spent fuel management, I think Finland is really leading the way. So I think Posiva is expecting to get the operating license in the coming months. Nobody knows, but very soon, so we can actually start disposing of the spent fuel. And I think that's, many have said that it's a game changer, so there actually will be a solution for the spent fuel management in the future.
Yeah, that was, I think it was IAEA's DG Grossi who said that the Posiva will be the game changer in the nuclear industry, because finally we have a solution from ground to ground, and in Finland we have made it, and like Jani said, that we might have then the first actually in operation in the next few months, like he said. But coming back to Jani, to you as they're asking as well, are there areas where it makes sense to place focus on, and areas where it makes more sense to outsource and get support from outside, from Nordics about this?
Yeah, of course, as said, Finland is a small country. Norway is a small country. Sweden is a bit bigger country, but still we are small players on a European scale, so we really need to think where we put our effort and resources. So I think there are certain areas where we have, I would say, world-leading competence, like spent fuel management, but it's clear that especially if we are planning to build new nuclear in the Nordics, then we don't really have the supply chains. We have some parts, but it's relatively limited, so of course it makes sense to rely on the European competence and capabilities in many areas.
Yeah, actually we have seen that, for example, Sweden, they have made this kind of study that how much they actually have the supply chain in their own and what parts are missing, and I think the Swedish government has done a great job in that part of too. But coming back to the Karl actually, and when we talk about the public perception and the community engagement, so with the history of strong policy, strong public engagement in the development of deep geological repository for spent nuclear fuel in Sweden, and what lessons can be applied to the current and future rollout of new nuclear project in that point of view?
Thanks. I think it's a good question. I think when you do general polls in communities, if they are in favor of nuclear or not, they come out pretty high. But I think we should take that with a bit of caution, because when you actually then say we're going to build something here, then typically there is another tone, another discussion. So I think this engagement with the community early, don't walk away from that. We have had problems in the industry, and there is a fear of nuclear in some parts still. So I think that engagement and openness and transparency would be very important when we go into new build. I also think that we have to go step by step. I think existing sites will be easy. I think to put up small AMRs in an industrial estate in a big city is going to be a bit more tricky. And I think as an industry we need to acknowledge that and understand what we need to do with the public opinions and discussions to make that happen. We shouldn't jump to conclusion that now everybody's in favor, because when it actually comes there, you're going to have, I think, resistance, as you will have in any big, building projects that you have in neighborhoods.
So Karl, you mean actually that the communication between the utilities and between the is important, and it has to make properly before you can do anything in the...
Yeah, and I think we should take one step back and know how if you go to a show like this, everybody's in favor, but when we go into those meetings, we should take it that this is something new, people don't understand it, they have heard about bad things in our industry, so take it with transparency and then show the developments that we have done in our industry as well. And I think that by that, we will be able to convince people that this is the right thing. So yeah, a little bit step by step.
Yeah, that's actually a really good advice, and I think we have done that a lot in Finland earlier as well, because as in Finland we have a great acceptance for the nuclear. It's over 70% actually at the moment, so we have done exactly in that way what Karl explained. But okay, then coming back to the Nordic collaboration and the shared competence development, István, we already discussed a bit with Jani, but the Nordic countries possesses complementary strength in nuclear research, digital technologies and education. Yet broad collaboration remains fragmented. What mechanism could better support long-term, large-scale Nordic cooperation in these areas?
Thank you for that. Of course, Nordic collaboration is not something that doesn't exist. Of course, no one claiming that. But of course, there's like Nordforce, NKS, there are specific mechanisms that enable the Nordic countries to work together. It makes sense because geographically we're a little bit closer, in culture they're a bit closer, we do things in a similar way. Yet, when we had some larger initiatives, there's certain things that now jointly as the Nordic countries would like to do together, because recognize, as it was very much said, that none of these countries are big enough necessarily to tackle these problems. But there are no mechanisms that exist to take on this really big problem in a large collaboration. Therefore, I think this MOU that we are going to sign between Finland and Sweden in just a short time today, I think it's very important because it may enable us to formalize our collaboration and come together with larger scale initiatives for which we actually need a collaboration between the Nordic countries. At the moment, I actually tried once and it didn't really work. So establishing a stronger collaboration, more formal collaboration based on which we can go directly, potentially to the governments of these countries, are very essential at this moment. Yeah, it may be more needed for Norway, but definitely a lot of benefit for Finland and Sweden as well.
Thank you, István. And you actually pointed really important thing, that the collaboration, I think it's a key issue for everything. That in the small countries, like Jani explained, that Finland, Sweden, and Norway, actually we are in the European scale. So only way to manage things and make reliable, affordable nuclear energy, new nuclear energy, we need collaboration. Then moving a bit about the innovation and deployment of the new technologies, Jani. Finland has recently commissioned a new nuclear unit a bit more than 2 years ago. First in a decade in Western Europe, actually, and it's leading the way in taking the world's first deep geological repository for spent fuel to use. So a VTT spin-off is also commercializing SMR for district heating. How has all this been possible, considering that Finland is quite small country, like you said, with the limited resources? So how do you think that Finland was capable to do this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think keyword is cooperation, collaboration, but I mean, of course, you need technical competence, research competence, so that's the starting point. But that's only the starting point. You need many other elements as well. So I think in Finland we have been lucky that we have had quite stable political climate to focus on nuclear. I mean, nuclear, it's not a political problem, it's a technical problem that can be solved. So that gives us a long-term outlook, so we can really start building our capabilities, competencies. So that's one thing. Of course, this kind of political stability is only possible if you have the trust. So Nordic societies are known to be kind of trust-based societies, but trust needs to be earned. It's not something that exists from the outset. So, of course, as Karl was saying, you need to have this transparency engagement all the time to kind of make things possible. But then, coming back to this collaboration, I think in Finland, if we think, for example, Olkiluoto 3, it's a kind of cooperative. So TVO, the operator, it's in a way cooperative. So several different companies come together, pool their resources and competencies to set up these capital-intensive projects. So I think cooperation is really a key element if you have limited resources.
So that was, Jani, actually an excellent point, and you actually competing filling the what István said earlier, that the collaboration is the key issue and key thing. But I would like to continue from you, Jani, that do you see the opportunities for increased Nordic cooperation in this space? And what would that add value?
Of course, I fully agree with István that it makes a lot of sense, because today you need to be ever more specialized in what you do, and for a small nation you really need to be very careful what you pick. So I mean, I think a good example of Nordic cooperation is, of course, it's partly for historical reasons, but Studsvik is very strong in studying fuels, irradiated fuels. VTT is very strong in studying reactor pressure vessel materials, and these are not, we are not really competing, we are collaborating. So customers come to us and we can point them to Studsvik if they are interested in fuel issues, and then we can work on the reactor pressure vessel issues. So have to be very smart in how you build your competencies and where you put your resources.
Yeah, that's actually quite clever what we're doing in the Nordics. That we are fulfilling our let's say what is missing from other country, we are fulfilling with other country competencies and doing work together. So, but I want to coming back to you, Jani, actually about the turning this around. Do you think that there are specific opportunities in the Nordic market, the markets for European and global players, and what could those be? Can we go in the market outside of the Nordic as well?
I guess this comes back to what I was already saying earlier. So we clearly have some competency capabilities that others don't have, especially on the spent fuel side. But then, let's say, if you look at the nuclear island technology, for example, that's something Sweden used to have. But I mean, the last unit in Sweden was commissioned 40 years ago, so the supply chains are more or less gone. Of course, there's still fuel manufacturing and other competencies, but I mean, there are competencies that we have lost over the years, and I think Europe has those competencies, and I think it would be attractive for European suppliers to work with the Nordics in these areas.
Thank you, Jani, and I would say the same as we have good players and we can be part of the European markets as well. But then actually jumping a bit a different topic and asking from Karl that related for technology and implementation. So recently in Sweden, you are focused deploying an SMRs with finalists for design including Hitachi, Hitachi, BWRX 300 and Rolls-Royce SMRs. What are the primary advantages of SMRs for Sweden's energy system, and what are the specific challenges of deploying these design? especially given the limited real-world deployment experience at the moment?
So obviously the selection you discussed was not the Swedish state, it was Vattenfall that selected GE and Rolls-Royce as their runners-up for deployment. I have listened to them, I've listened to many others. I think there are a couple of things. First of all, obviously the promise of building in modules, building faster, building with timetables that actually will be kept. That's one big thing. I think we shouldn't underestimate also in smaller countries like we are, that you build incrementally, that you don't have, like we just had, I saw on the press this week that Oskarshamn 3, that is 1.4 giga, just came to service again after being stopped for almost 6 months. That's a big stop for a country like Sweden. If it's only one SMR that stops, it's a smaller stop. So I think the granularity of how you build up the power is also a big advantage for a grid that is not as big, or the consumption as it in the larger countries. Then obviously land is always a problem, so you can also build in more sort of not so big areas and learn. That's what I heard from Vattenfall a lot. You learn, you build one, and you build next, you learn, and you build the second, and you build the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. I think that's very important as well. We have seen delays in Finland and in UK, of course. They can probably be optimized over time, but I think SMR is really about building granularity, de-risking the projects. But the technology that has now been chosen is light water reactor, so it's pretty basic, and I think that's also for a reason, because they know that the regulator will not have they will still have the same scrutiny, and if it's a totally new technology, then obviously there is a more delay potentially. So I think that was pretty smart. So I think we will see more of light water SMR in Sweden in the first phase, and then in the second phase, I think and hope that we will see other technologies as well.
So you can actually see that there is a lot of advantages to build the SMRs in the near future, and make it like you said, that it's not a big deal if there is a couple of 100 megawatts is going outside of the grid. But if the full big-scale reactor is, like you said, it's 6 months away, it's a big influence for the whole system in Sweden. Then actually jumping a bit another topics as well for the economics and energy market integration in Sweden. So there is a lot of arguing that the new nuclear power is too expensive and too slow to build. Like you said, that when the big-scale reactors, there is a lot of delays in Finland was earlier, and also UK and in France as well. And that could displace investment in cheaper wind and solar renewables. How does the panel respond of these economic criticisms, especially regarding the total cost to customers? Because that's the most important. So if we start from Karl and then Jani, and if István has something to say, so please, Karl.
Well, I think it's easy to look into short term versus long term. And if we believe, and I think we'll do that in this room, that we need more electricity over time to decarbonize the society, we need to incentivize new build-out of fossil-free base power, which is nuclear at this time. So I don't think there's a lot of debate about that. I think the bigger problem, maybe, is how we ensure investments incentives for existing plants, because they will not, to my knowledge, in any country get a lot of new incentives. And they also need to be massively invested in to be prolonged to 2060, 2070. I think that's the balance act that we need, because otherwise we will build new and then we will decommission the old and we'll have the same base load. So if we don't keep the old ones and make sure that they are stable for many more years, we will not get new capacity, we will just replace capacity. So I think the finance for new is just obvious, you need to do it, but we have to be mindful that we have the right economics in also maintaining existing power.
So you actually mean that we have to subsidizing, or not subsidizing, but support the existing plant for the LTO and long-term operation as we are doing with the new builds?
If you have the same scheme, I don't know. But I think it's important that that doesn't happen, that we start closing them down because of economics, which happened in Sweden 20 years back. We closed down them from economical reasons. That cannot happen now. Then this is a new build, will become not a waste, but it's not going to be as good. Then.
Thank you, Karl. Okay, how about you, Jani? How you think about, in our case, in Finland?
I think in Finland, the current electricity mix is pretty much perfect, I would say. So we have around 40% nuclear, 20% hydro, 20% renewables, so mainly wind. So the system is practically CO2 free. I would say it's affordable. I would also say that it can ensure security of supply. So to me, that's a perfect mix in a way. But then also, as what Karl was saying, situation is good today, but how do we have the incentives in place for investments that we can keep it that way? And currently, Finland is purely market-driven. So there has been some political discussion if, let's say, nuclear would need some sort of subsidies, but that's not at all on the same level as in Sweden. So I don't see that happening in the near future. So I have to say that I'm a bit concerned about this longer-term perspective. So will we have this very balanced energy mix also in the future?
Yeah, actually, it's like you said, that the price in Finland or in the Nordic markets at the moment is quite low. We're talking about maybe 37, 38 euros per megawatt hour, which is quite cheap. So it doesn't make sense for the investments. But as in Sweden, they have made a really good job and looking for the base price, the how to look the securing the investments in Sweden as well. So how about in Norway?
So in Norway, of course, we have a slightly different perspective because we don't have any nuclear power plants in Norway. And of course, like right now, it's not like we don't have power, but the whole question cannot be approached from a cost perspective. The whole question has to be approached from an energy security perspective. At the moment, or in the future, will we have a grid that actually has enough non-seasonal dependent energy sources and or energy sources that don't cause a problem with the inertia in the system? Of course, in Norway, there's a lot of analysis, and there are some people on the positive side, and of course, they show that, unarguably that we cannot go away without nuclear power. Some people say that, yes, we can get away without nuclear power. I am hoping for that we get to a stage when we will make an unbiased assessment of that and really make a scientific base of, yes, do we need a reliable base power that is not season dependent? Can we get away without that? And if the answer is no, we cannot, then it's not going to be a question of cost. It's going to be a question of we actually need it for energy security.
Thank you, István. And actually, our panel is getting to end, but we have 2 minutes to go before the panel is actually ending. So now there is a possibilities for 1 or 2 questions from audience for the panelists. There is a first hand up, so I'm coming with my mic there.
Yeah, my name is Erland Hagen. I promote the idea about the closed loop. Norway is a bit of an infant when it comes to the nuclear industry, but asking Sweden and Finland, can we be ready to continue the nuclear industry by adopting the closed loop system?
Thank you. Jani, do you want to answer first and then Karl?
So you mean closing the fuel cycle? Yeah. I think this has always been in the discussion. I think, well, Finland is going for the once through fuel cycle at the moment. I would say that that's, well, there are many factors, but important factor back in the day was to be able to demonstrate that there is a solution, so not wait for decades to do something about the spent fuel. So we can do something with that already now. So that's kind of one of the driving forces. But I mean, personally, many countries have closed fuel cycles, and of course, technically, there's nothing about that. But then there are some, let's say, other politically sensitive issues why some countries have not chosen that. So, but I mean, technically, it would be perfectly doable. So, I don't know what else to say.
So, Jani, we already have a technology for that, but it's like you said, it's not allowed all countries because based on the legislation and rules. But okay, Karl, your opinion?
Same as I said before. Light water, normal type of reactor will go first. In the second wave, I think the Nordics, Sweden, Finland, there are reactor developers, there are scientists. that will make this happen if it's economically and technically feasible. Nothing to stop that. But you're right. You can see movements in the U.S. where they, go faster in this direction. And but yeah, it is. I haven't seen that really yet in Sweden.
Thank you, Karl. So actually, this is ending our panel today, and I would like to ask to give a big hand for our panelists for the discussion and the answers. And there on right side of me, there is a small room actually that you can talk with our panelists and ask a bit more question and make some networking there. So please enjoy the rest of 25 minutes time there and discuss with our panelists. Thank you.